Welcome to the Dream, Plan, Start, Grow podcast hosted by Allison Turner. In each episode, we interview real, everyday entrepreneurs to learn how they got their start, what challenges they faced and overcame when starting the business, and what successes each has had. Welcome to the Dream, Plan, Start, Grow podcast. I'm your host, Allison Turner. I'm the founder of BatCat Media Group and Dream, Plan, Start, Grow. The purpose of this podcast is to really explore the entrepreneurial journey by interviewing different types of entrepreneurs, how they got their start, what challenges they faced, and how that journey has flowed to where they are today. So today we have Val Silidker with us, who is the owner of Psychospiritual Institute. So how is that company, how did that company come to be?
Oh, that's the big question, isn't it?
Right out of the gate.
There. Psychospiritual Institute, the first thing that comes to me is it came to be out of necessity. So I had done it, for 20 years, been, we can dive into all of that, but done many, many things, different kinds of things in my entrepreneurial journey. And the heart of it has always been to help us really tune in and remember who we are, and our deeper context for life, our connection to ourselves, to each other, and to Earth, to our living planet. My background is in ecology, and my background's also as an activist and, production. I've done a lot of events and all kinds of things that have brought community together. So Psychospiritual Institute came from this journey of me deepening my connection deeper and deeper into the world and the issues of the world and who we are as a whole, and recognizing that the core issue really starts with what we believe about ourselves and our relationship to life. Mm-hmm. And so my journey outward of expanding my sense of self became this recognition that the way to do the work is by turning inward. So I started studying, depth psychology and transpersonal psychology work, and recognized bringing all of that together was where I really needed to be. So PSI, Psychospiritual Institute, came out of that necessity of bringing together psychology, spirituality, ecology, science and the spirit.
Wow, that's a mouthful. So explain, because the one word in there that I don't feel, you probably hear it every day because it's part of your journey, but ecology, explain what that is, because it's not a word that when I'm out and about that people use. All the other ones that you just used, psychology, spirituality, all that is out there.
Yeah.
But explain what that is and how that ties in.
Oh, yeah. And this is really the heart of the work, Allison, because I think there's a lot of work out there that's supporting us to, especially with our changing world right now. There's so much suffering that's happening on our planet. So there's a lot of wonderful work that's being done that helps us to turn inward and, be with the big emotions that we're feeling and learn how to process them in a healthy way, working with trauma, even, collective trauma, ancestral trauma. Ecology comes into play where it's not just about healing for ourselves. We do our inner work and we have to work through what feels really present to get kind of out of survival mode, so that we can, and the so that we can is the big piece here, so that we can become greater, give a greater contribution, share our gifts with the world. So the ecology part is really a deep ecology, which is about understanding who we are as humans and how we relate to the world around us, how our choices are more than just for us. Our love is more than just for us. The inner work we do is so that we can, take a larger stand for what we believe in the world. So the work that we're doing at the Institute brings together transpersonal psychology, where we're training people to become guides and coaches in this work it's called psychosynthesis. And it's the roots of transpersonal or spiritual psychology. And at the same time, we're looking at larger global issues and how we can hold both the one-on-ones and also groups dealing with things like, climate anxiety and, just so much that's arising in our individual psyches from the collective. So that's where the ecology comes into play. I don't think we can have a conversation about personal healing without understanding that we are interconnected with the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I think that's true. And I think a lot of people, well, in my own personal opinion, miss the boat on that. So either they don't pay attention to what their actions are and how their actions impact anyone around them. They're kind of in their own little bubble and don't really see that at all. Or they do some of the healing, but it's really about them and not how that healing then hopefully positively impacts the immediate world around them, and then how that can have the ripple effect out to a larger world.
Absolutely. And it's like cultivating, inner leadership, and also recognizing that no thing we do is too small. So it's not necessarily about, becoming the next Gandhi or Martin Luther King, although that might be embedded in some of us, right? It's also about just how we show up in our lives more authentically, because when we become more authentically who we are, it's like who we are provides information into a larger living system. If we can be more authentic, more compassionate, right? Because what's in our authentic self? Being kind, caring about one another, right? Standing for equality. Like these are the things that are authentically us, but they can get masked and hidden when we've experienced different traumas in our lives and we start being reactive in the world, rather than settling in and showing up authentically, being responsive from this space of what we really value. So no thing is too small. By being who we are, we naturally create a ripple effect that creates change in our world.
Okay. Now, that's fascinating to me, because I think there's not a lot of people doing what you're doing out there, because I see coaching programs, but the coaching is either, business coaching, which is more what I do. It's either, might be, life coaching, which, has its own way of doing depending on which program you go through, or some people don't even go through a program and they just do their own thing.
Right.
So I think you kind of encompass kind of all those different pieces.
Yeah.
So that's great. You mentioned that you've had that 20-year entrepreneurial journey. So what other pieces of business or businesses have you created that has now led you into Psychospiritual Institute?
Yeah. So Psychospiritual Institute's been around for close to 7 years now. And when I first started it's as long as I can remember, I've been an entrepreneur. I mean, it's just been part of my journey since my, really like my early 20s. And in my early 20s, I really started off I would say as an activist, this huge heartbreak of discovering the suffering of other animals, like, in factory farms and in zoos and in circuses and through vivisection, like all kinds of horrible ways that we treat other animals. And it really changed something in me when I learned about that, and this is like a long story short, but through that heartbreak, I started to ask deeper questions about who we are and, how do I live a life that is, aligned with what I value, which is compassion and justice and kindness. And so it shifted how I was showing up in the world. And I immediately started a nonprofit organization called Rattle the Cage Productions with my partner at the time, which is still around, although I'm not, still an active, VP of it, but it's still around, making documentary films about our relationship to non-human animals and the earth. And that launched me into a lot of film festivals where I started my public speaking. So I started public speaking about these things that I was super passionate about. And like, you could, you know me, I'm like, brah, like bring it, with so much passion and care and, feeling already like this is bigger than me. Like, how can I serve? So that led me to asking more questions about who we are. And so my environmental, my animal activism became environmental activism, social activism, social justice issues, and that led me into the world of ecology. So my graduate work is in ecology and education and deep ecology, which I mentioned earlier, looking at this deeper philosophical and spiritual connection to life. So through that time, I started creating events. And I started, right away just raising money for kids in distress and raising money for free speech and started creating like some pretty big events where we had, first hundreds of people, then thousands of people. Wow. Then I started creating festivals like eco festivals and all kinds of wonderful things that brought community together and featured different amazing teachers in the community. And then that led to doing some retreats that were, like 300 plus people retreats
Wow.
with big names, performers from the world. So I've done a lot of events, community building. That's been a lot of my background, along with coaching and facilitating groups in work of deep ecology. So through all of that and through my own personal education and deepening into like I said earlier, like the transpersonal psychology work and recognizing the more that I expanded into like this larger vision of self, the more I realized that it's about this inner paradigm shift. All of those things is what led me then to begin PSI and bring those skills into it. So the teaching and the facilitating and the coaching, I did a 3.5-year program in transpersonal psychology work and coaching skills personally, and all of that, bringing it together, is what led me to where I am. So there's been a lot of hats along the way, a lot of pieces. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, the one thing I'll ask you is, like what I've seen in my own journey, part of the challenges, for me in college, I had hopes and dreams of, I wanted to travel the world, maybe teach for America, all those things. And then kind of real life strikes of, okay, you graduate, now you're living in this apartment, you got to pay for the apartment, you got to, if you have a dog, you got to pay for the dog, you got to eat, you got, all these things. And so real life strikes and you get kind of into that rat race, so to speak. So how did you stay? Because you said in your 20s, you started having that exploration and you really knew you wanted something more. How did you block out all the, noise around you or the real people, I shouldn't say real world, that's not the right word, but what the world says we should do once we graduate from college of like, go get a job, do this, do that. I mean, most of the time college doesn't train you unless you're in the college of entrepreneurism. It's not training you to actually go out to work for yourself.
Absolutely.
It's training you to fit into another company. So how did you block out some of that noise and continue on your journey?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For me, I think in a way I've always kind of danced to the beat of my own drum. So I will put that out there first. So like even college, like when I was, so I went to school for massage therapy when I was 18, and I went to school for massage because I was fascinated with the human body and, and I wanted to learn more about that. And what that did for me is it gave me what I like to call like the thing that I can do now to make the money that I also care about, but may not be my whole life's journey. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to have clients and go to school and do different things along the way. Mm-hmm. And so even my college, when I went to college after that, after going to school for massage, I was like, well, I want to learn German. And so I'm like, I'm going to take a German class. And then I'm like, theater was always a big part of my life. Yeah. I did professional theater, regional theater. I had a TV show for 3 years. So I have a background in performance. And I was like, I'm going to start taking some acting classes. And I just started taking everything I wanted to learn. Like, I've just been like, so I think this is going to lead to this really, because I've always been, just really passionate about learning and the things that light me up that I want to learn more about. And I just went to school to learn. I didn't go to school like, I got to do this class, and then I'll graduate. I was like, learn everything I want to possibly learn, right? And then I'm like,
in school for 10 years.
Right. And I'm like, I probably am close to some kind of degree. But in the meantime, I was doing theater. I was doing activism. I was traveling the world and taking classes. And so it just got spread out and out and out. And then finally I'm like, I'm close to some kind of degree. I just need this class, that class, and this class. And I remember taking public speaking was one of the classes I had to take to graduate. And I was taking that class. I was already a professional speaker. They're like, you don't even have to take the final. I was like, God,
you can skip that part.
Right. So it was like all, learning so many things. And then, so that became like this, just my own journey. It wasn't like, this year. So I just made my way through. Even when I finished my undergraduate as an English major and creative writing, I started speaking in classes because I already had my first documentary, which was Lolita, about Lolita at the Miami Aquarium, Slave to Entertainment. It's free on YouTube if you guys want to watch it. It's really important. And so I was already speaking in classes, undergraduate and graduate classes. And then it naturally led to me to go to grad school in ecology and education, which was my passion. Okay. So, along the way, like learning learning and learning and learning, I think is a very important thing for an entrepreneur in any respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing all of that, I just found my own way that didn't dance to the beat of society's drum.
Right.
It was just my way through, you know, and it was led by my passion for the world. It was led by those things that I talked about earlier in my early 20s that just broke me open to something deeper in the world. It was like this pull into the world in a larger way. So the noise of society can fade while, you know what I mean? When you have something so big that you stand for. So
Right.
that plus the, you know, ongoing learning and anything I knew I needed to learn in order to do the work that I felt called to do, on it, you know?
No, that's good. I mean, because so the big message I hear here is, you know, when you go to college or just any kind of school, you know, or just a program, you know, find what you're passionate about and what lights you up and what's going to further your personal growth and your professional growth, and really go after that. I mean, my degree was in history, so history, you know, unless I was going to go get a PhD or teach it in the high school level or something, that was kind of a moot point. And I hated history in high school, and then I became a history major in college, really because of certain professors that I had. But I find that degree influences how I see the world kind of each and every day because of the impact
Absolutely.
of history on today, and how history can then repeat itself again and again if probably the world doesn't heal, or whatever society, you know, whatever happens in, you know, whether it's a war or, you know, whatever it is, if that doesn't get healed, then more than likely it could easily repeat itself down the road.
And yes, right. We see all kinds of patterns in history.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would say, you know, I think that no thing that we do is wasted. And
Right.
I would also say this to young entrepreneurs who are starting out, you know, like I'm in my 40s now. This is when I was in my 20s doing all the things I'm saying and like wearing all of these different hats and trying, you know, I think it's about self-discovery at that point. We're really discovering who we are. And so it's okay not to absolutely know what that is.
Right.
Because something I've learned along the way is that the essence has always been in me. Like that's been my focus, is like, how do I help us remember who we are and feel more interconnected with life, right? That's my focus. And what does it look like? It looks like I had a band for 10 years that sang songs about the earth.
Right.
You know, it looks like doing these events that bring community together. It looks like I was a professor at FIU teaching ecology as an adjunct professor. It looks like a lot of different things. So the form may change over the years, especially when you're younger and you're exploring what that is. And then you find your focus. And there was a thing that happened where the focus became a major pivot point in my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay.
So, but that focus, I felt if it had happened when I was 20, like I'm so grateful that I had all the years of being the Renaissance woman, you know what I mean? And learning
Right.
so many different things and wearing all the hats. Like I was a singer in a band, then I booked the bands, then I managed the stages. So it's like wearing all the hats helped me do my job even better, no matter what that looked like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it absolutely makes sense, because as an entrepreneur, especially when you start the company, you wear all the hats.
You wear all the hats.
You're the salesperson, you're the fulfillment person, you are the marketer, you're the accountant, you're all the...
And you're the teacher, and you're the person holding like,
exactly.
you know, the heavy weight if that's what you're
doing
as a
it
coach
all.
or, facilitator, sure. Absolutely. So something I learned along the way, Allison, is this. So like those were all the little pieces that I wouldn't trade for the world, because they helped me deepen in lots of different areas as a Renaissance woman. And I think when we have like, you know, this multi-interest and we explore it and we pursue it, you know, we just become so well-rounded, you know, and I think that was like something that lifts me into where I am today. And then somewhere in my 30s, I thought, God, I'm doing a lot of different things, right? this what you're feeling when you hear it.
Yeah.
I was like, what is it that what connects it all together?
Right.
Like I went to undergraduate school for English and studied creative writing and mythology. I'm like, well, I've always been fascinated in the story of the human. Well, gee, so deep ecology is about who are we as humans and how do we relate to the world, and understanding who we are through, you know, transpersonal psychology and connecting to both the personality and the soul and like aligning who we are and how we live. That's very much about the personal story. So what connected it for me was like being so passionate about the story that we're living and choosing who and how we live and how we create the possibilities of the future for the future ones to come. So like, we're not just living for now, we're also living for the story of the future. So story became a big piece for me that tied it together.
All the way back to college.
Yeah. And then so creating PSI, Psychospiritual Institute, for me was taking all of these pieces that in some ways felt disconnected, but then I realized, oh, there's actually a thread that weaves through everything, and put it all together in this one main focus, which was, okay, we run a 9-month board certified life coach and leadership training program that brings together these core pieces that I spoke to earlier, and am supporting people who feel that call to stand for something larger and want to learn how to both heal within themselves and through that process, be able to be a guide for other people in their healing. Wow. And in a large way. So it's like, that's what led me to where I am today, and gives me a tremendous amount of passion and focus for the work that I do, which I think any successful entrepreneur needs to have.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know people that go into entrepreneurship for the money, which is the exact reason you shouldn't go into it. But they never have the passion around it, and you can tell, and usually it fails. So they may make some money, but then they get bored because it's not really what they want to be doing. It's not their life's work. It's not their vision. It's not anything to do with that. And then it just kind of goes, either they, if they've done something with the company, they sell it pretty quickly, or turn it over to someone else to run and still own it, which is one way to do it as well. But it's not really helping anyone, including themselves. Yeah. But the other thing you spoke about, and you've been speaking about, is that evolution. And I want to just readdress that as an entrepreneur, because I think, like you said, we're always learning.
Right.
And we have to be. So whether it's reading a book about, self-development, personal development, business development, whatever it is, whether it's going out on a walk with nature and listening to a meditation at the same time, it could be something like that. We're always learning, and all those little pieces impact where our journey goes. So even, I was in tennis for many years, and now I'm doing something completely different, owning a marketing agency, but I don't ever regret any of that, because it gave me, what it gave me at the time. And I went a completely different direction after that. And some things happened in my life that kind of triggered me out of that. But it impacts, because I did a lot of one-on-one stuff with people. I did a lot of group teaching, in the tennis world and things like that. And that impacts exactly what I do today, just more on a business side.
And that's so important what you're saying, because all the things that we've ever done in our lives, everything we've ever done, even like the theater I used to do, impacts how I show up and understand the needs of my students, my clients, and when I do speaking for groups, like really listening and feeling the energy of the space. Like everything that we do, we can extrapolate. Again, take the essence and what it is that you learned and developed from that thing. Let the form fade, and like, what's the essence? What are the key lessons in that I can bring into this new form and this new endeavor? And I think that those are what you're saying is really key to that. Like there's, again, no time is wasted. Everything we do helps us deepen. Even the things that those failures, those so-called, oh, I tried that and it didn't quite work. The other day I was sitting with my son, I have an 8-year-old, and I was like, oh, you know what? Let's think about like, what's a way that we can define fail, And let me see if I can remember. We said, focus. So when something doesn't happen the way you think you want it to happen, you're like, okay, wait, focus, come back to center, accept the situation as it is. Investigate with curiosity, and learn. That's focus, great. Accept, investigate, learn. It's like every single thing we do is part of our path, and when it doesn't quite work out the way we wanted to, they are amazing opportunities for us to grow and learn and change that one thing, do it a little bbit differently, and not be taken down by the situation. And maybe it's even to say, wow, like this direction is not actually where I want to go. So how do I take all of this that I've been building and learn and pivot it into something that feels more aligned for me?
Right.
That's totally okay. It's part of the journey a lot of times.
Absolutely. A lot of people struggle with, say they lost their job. I mean, I know a lot of people have started businesses during this last 2 years because of the pandemic. Either they lost their job, they started working from home and they rethought what their priorities are.
Yes.
Which is, I think, is a huge one. I'm sure you see that a lot in the work you do as well. But they're like, okay, I've been working for this company for 20 years as whatever, corporate something, corporate bookkeeper, corporate finance person. Now what do I do? And one of the greatest challenges I find, which is more of a societal piece, is, we have this impression that we're pigeonholed in whatever that career is. I felt that after teaching tennis. I taught tennis for 14 years. And at year 11, I was ready to do something else, but I was like, what do I do? And I couldn't kind of think outside that box. So what I do, I went back to grad school. So I thought the school box instead, which I don't regret in any way, but I went back and got my MBA with a focus in sports management. So it tied the master's in business into the sports side, because I thought at the time I really enjoyed sports, not just tennis, but that I would want to do something in the sports world, but I didn't want just a master's in sports management, which really pigeonholes you right there, and that's it. I wanted the MBA to have some flexibility with that. But what would you suggest to entrepreneurs that maybe are in their 30s or 40s and have had that career, maybe one career or maybe two, but are trying to figure out, like, I really don't enjoy what I do? Like, what would be your suggestion of like exploring something different, or what to go into? How would you start that journey?
So a few things are coming up, when you're saying that. And one is this: don't stop absolutely everything. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, I see what happens a lot of times is people are just like, they'll say, oh, well, just get rid of that job, and go do what you want to do. And yeah, that sounds great in theory, but the reality is, like, we need to there's something about like having something that gives you that stability and that financial stability right now, but you don't have to be stuck there, right? But we live in a world where we have to be able to pay our bills and eat. Right. And so I'm gonna give you some realistic response right now first. So it's like, make sure that you have something now that gives you what you need to take care of the practical things in your life. If you have children, if you have this, make sure you have something there. Then if you want to build something else, it's going to take some commitment, dedication, and time management, because you're going to have to find the times and the nights and weekends to begin to craft and create or explore or take a class or do something along with that then. Right. So it becomes a transition space from where you are to where you feel drawn, or where you're curious about. So I think that's really important to say, because like, I've had people that are just like, oh, now I just graduated, I'm a coach, quit everything. And I'm like, wait a minute, where are all my clients? Because
did it just pop up?
Because it takes time and dedication.
Absolutely.
And I think when people are first starting off on an entrepreneurial journey, and I can speak, more from like a facilitation and coaching space, but I think that the first year is the hardest for everybody, because there's a huge learning curve. If you're not tech savvy, if you don't understand online business, there's so much to learn. So you have to give yourself the grace and the space to learn, to figure out, how do I find my flow finding clients? Like, there's just a lot that happens. And so the majority of people will give up in that first year.
Yep.
Don't give up. Stay with it. If fear comes up, acknowledge that fear. It's okay. We all, as entrepreneurs, whenever we take a big step or a big leap, there's always like, woo, how's that going to go? Like I'm investing my time, I'm investing my money, getting a good coach, getting support when you're growing your business is really important, because we're not going to try to figure it out from scratch.
Yep, absolutely.
So like even Psychospiritual Institute, that's been around for close to 7 years, but I have this huge background, and I did not go to school for business. I was self-taught for so many years. I was trying a ton of things, and honestly, some fell through the cracks, and some grew into amazing gardens. Right. And we created something so incredible. Like we were like the center point for conscious events in South Florida for many years with my company Expand the Love. And then people started copying us. Like we became so successful in that way, and that was just me learning and trying and going with my passion and trying things right. And then I got a business coach. We did a year mastermind together,
Yes.
Like, and invested money. And I just spent another, like, I can't even say, ridiculous amount of money on a business coach now, who's like, helping us to to break through another glass ceiling.
Yeah.
So always be learning, always get support, have a now thing that allows you to transition into what you want.
Right.
But don't give up on your dream. Don't give up on your passion. Don't live a life where you're, 85 looking back going, well, what was that all about? Find what your thing is and your way of contributing to the world. In any way, even if like being a stay-at-home mom is a gorgeous example where it's not building this big entrepreneurial thing, you're giving something such a gift to your child to grow, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no thing too small. There's no way of showing up that can't be a contribution. So just remember that too, like as you're holding that big vision, right?
Absolutely. And the one thing I heard, the big word I heard is invest, and invest in yourself.
Yes.
So whether that's education, whether that's investing in a coach, whether that's investing in, whatever you need, like once you start a business, you want to eventually, not all at once, but farm out the things that either you don't like to do, you're not good at doing, not efficient at doing, it might be the marketing side of it. It could be the accounting side. Eventually you want to be doing just like overseeing the company and some of the service side and not all the other pieces that go with it.
And eventually is the key word there.
Right. Well, yeah. Right. That could take a year. That could take 5 years.
Yeah.
It could take, I still keep my bookkeeping in-house just because it's more a control freak thing. But all my, my payroll's out of the house. My accounting is, as far as like end of the year stuff and the tax returns and all that wonderful stuff, that's all out of house. Yeah. At this point, the bookkeeping will be the last piece that will eventually follow down the road. But yeah. So you have to let go of control because even though it's your baby, so to speak, there are people that do what you're doing for a career, whether it's the bookkeeping side. So I'm teaching myself something here, whether it's whatever, the marketing side, the website design side, whatever it is, they do it. Their company does it so they can be more efficient at it and help you, which then frees up your time to really grow even more in the business.
Absolutely. And what's coming to me as you're saying that, Allison, is like the importance of having, just being patient with the process. Mm-hmm. We want it all to happen right now. And if we happen to have like millions of dollars when we're starting our business, great, we can hire it all out and get it all done. But the reality is for most of us, like we're starting from scratch. We're starting where we're juggling, a job over here and we're building over here. Mm-hmm. And, we're wearing pretty much all the hats in the beginning. And I'm going to tell you, it's a lot, especially in the beginning, it's a lot. That's that's the truth of it. And, your passion drives you, right? Your vision, what you stand for drives you. Wearing all those hats, even though it feels like a lot in the beginning, is actually such a blessing because the fact that I've been able to do, first of all the things and that we talked about in the past, and then even with PSI, like in the beginning, wearing so many of the different hats that I'm now just starting to be like, does that fit your head? Oh, it's fitting really nicely. So like I just gave away the enrollment conversations, which for me was one of those things that you have to let go. You have to let go. Yes. Because for me, like I'm really good at that. It's my bit. I love to sell because I'm selling from the heart and I know what I have is going to change your life. So right. So to have somebody else step in and do that for me was like a big thing, but it freed up so much of my time to work on my business because it's hard to work in and on simultaneously. Yep. But when you start wearing all the hats, I also know how to train that person because I've done that job. I know how to I actually learned a little bit of Infusionsoft now. So like I know how to do the basics, even though like I give the rest of that stuff away, But you find like wearing those hats really helps you understand who to hire, how to speak the language, and how to make sure they're doing what you need. So it's a gift to wear those hats in the beginning. So just give yourself patience with the process, try them on, get the help you need, take some classes, learn, but be patient with the process.
Yeah. And patience is a key. I talk about that a lot in several of the previous podcasts as well as the long game. And not only because people want it now. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm sure you've felt that way too, but you have to be patient. I mean, I get people that, want a marketing strategy for BatCat Media Group and they want, the one thing they can do right this second to get more visibility on their website. I'm like, there's probably not just one thing you can do, first of all. And it's really a long game unless you want to just do Google ads and you have a ton of money to sink into them, but then there's no really residual effect once you stop doing those Google ads. And the longer game is the search engine optimization, but that's kind of an ongoing game. It's not just a one-off thing and you're done. So same thing with business growth. It's a long game, and you have to figure out, what are you looking to accomplish this year? And set the goal high. Even if you don't meet that goal, like set it high. Don't set the bar like here because, you want to go from here to here. You want to go from here to here. And if you don't meet this is okay. But at least you're setting the goal high and you figure out what the pieces are to get to that next step.
Yeah. I think, allowing ourselves to become visible is a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And especially in, depending on what you're doing, of course, but in most businesses, like putting ourselves out there. And I always will teach my students, we do, in the program, we have a section that we get into the business, business of coaching, where we go over some really key business fundamentals.
That's good.
And one of the key things is, we start with education-based marketing, because if you don't already have a big following and you're just starting off as an entrepreneur, people need to get to know who you are, what you teach, what your expertise is. They want to feel your passion, your charisma, your energy come through, your uniqueness, because we're all totally unique in the way we show up. So putting yourself out there in any way that you can becomes key. Mm-hmm. And teaching what you learn, teaching what you know, teaching what you're passionate about. And then the right people are going to find you. They're going to connect to you. You're going to start to build your following, by putting yourself out there. So yeah, like I'm coming back to that question. Is there one thing you can do? And like, maybe, there's not necessarily one thing, but for me, it's really about like allowing ourselves to become visible, which takes a lot of self-trust, and a lot of that voice going, who are you to say that? Oh, you're a fraud. All those little inner voices that pop up inside of us, no matter how big we are, and just recognizing, oh, there's that voice. And I know that what I'm offering the world is going to make a difference. And mm-hmm. This is what I have to do. So right. I got that voice. I'm going to acknowledge that voice is there. And well, I have this phrase that I say, but I don't know if I can say a bad word on this.
You can say whatever you want.
All right. Okay. So like what I say to myself is when I'm about to I metaphorically say, push that button and go live. I say to myself, be fucking brave. Just like right now that I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to say, all those voices, blah, 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 just push, just do it. Just do, right. Go engage your will and take the action that you need to take.
Right.
That you need to take. Take the step you need to take. The voices are here. I'm going to work with those. But this is what I need to do, right?
Oh, that's great. I think that's true. So you're always moving forward, which is the key piece. Even if you move forward and something stopped you, because entrepreneurship's not a straight line. So it's not like, okay, there's my end goal over there and I'm just going to move on up the mountain. Usually you're going to zigzag, may go back a little bit, come forward, go back again and go forward. So it's always, but staying in that mindset, which is what you just brought up, the mindset piece of, okay, the voice is there, acknowledging it, but keep moving forward. Something, some kind of stumbling block comes in. What can I learn from this situation? Okay, I'm moving forward. So that's always what you have to keep doing. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And that's why so many new business owners fail in the first. I know there's a huge statistic of 1 year. There's a big statistic. I think once you make it past 5, you're better. And I think the key number is 7, maybe, because I think I'm at 9 right now. So you're at 7. So you're in the magic number, I think. So, but that's what you see out there is because people become frustrated. They sink more money into it. They hit a brick wall, but they're not, you have to keep figuring out like, okay, what's plan B? Plan A didn't work very well. So what's plan B? Like you got to zig over here, zag over there and figure out what resources you can use to break through those walls or those barriers.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you said resources because that's so important too. Like, not only like the outer resources of like, who do I know, or the networking and nurturing your relationships. Cause like as a community builder, I've done so many things that have like, oh, you're so amazing at this. Come over here and speak to the, like I brought a lot of people and sparkled people, right. Into the world and helped them shine. So now when it comes down to things like those relationships have been supportive for me. So nurturing those relationships and recognizing who who are your people and having those outer resources. Also the inner resources that we forget that we have. We have so many inner resources. Absolutely. Coming back to like, extrapolating the lessons that I've learned from all the other, things that I've done in my life, to the deep, dark challenges that you've overcome that showed you who you really are and the strength and passion you have inside of you, to the things that that when you see in the world, it breaks your heart. And you're like, oh, this is something that pulls me forward. Like finding out what is the information inside of you, that allows you to clearly hold your vision, to have that spiritual vision, this life vision, and a real focus toward taking even a baby step, or even as Allison's saying, like a curve to the left, a step back, a curve to the right, but always holding your heart in alignment with that vision and just keep moving and hold those resources, the inner and the outer resources to help you along the way, because you're not alone in this.
Yes, no, absolutely. You're definitely not alone in it. And make sure you keep those lines of communication, whether it's to a coach, to fellow business owners, to people that support you, accountability partners. Keep those lines open, because especially when you start a business, it's maybe you're working out of your house, you set up an office there. I've talked to people that they feel alone because they, other than going out and networking to build their business, they don't have anyone because there's not a team in place yet. You haven't gotten to that point where you can create that team. So that's the biggest piece I hear about is like, you have to, find those accountability partners, hire that coach, figure out what are all the pieces you need to support your journey. So you can touch base when you have that down day or that off day or whatever it is, and not just spiral down here and not rebound and say, I shouldn't do this. Let me go a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm going to shift directions for just a second, because I know you're married and you referenced your son a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I always like to ask, because I think family plays a huge role in entrepreneurship. How does Jay and, how do you fit in, or how does your business fit in with the family dynamic? Does it impact it positively? Is there some negatives to it? What challenges have you had with it?
Yeah. Oh God, Allison, that's huge. So yeah, one of the biggest things. So when I have my son, Sagan, he's 8. And when I was pregnant, I was in the midst of, I had a retreat, like the Zen retreat at that time. And it was like 300-person retreat each year. And the very first year I was putting it on is when I got pregnant. And then for 2 years after we did it for 3 years. And it was the only one that it was the only thing I did really those 3 years, which is focus on that with my son. Cause it was like pregnant, birth, new mom. Oh my God. All the research I did was about giving birth. What do I do now? So there was a lot. So I just tried to stay focused on I had one big thing, and I didn't try to do a million things. I gave myself some space, because for me, I've always been like showing up really big in the community, like the mama of the community. I put myself out there in very big ways in that way. So now I had to be like, well, what is it to be a mama for my son? Right. And I had to let go of trying to be everywhere, do everything, wear all the hats in that time. Absolutely. So for the first few years, it was a lot of like rediscovering who am I now as both a businesswoman, and, in service to the world in big ways, and also in an intimate way with my family. And that cohesion between my husband and my son, and like, what we were stepping into. So that was the first couple. It took me I would say a good 2 years to really settle in and find my flow, and gave myself that. And then I started Psychospiritual Institute, and it's a juggling act. No joke. It's a juggling act, because like as a mama, I want to really be there for my son, and I make sure that I create space to be there for all the important things, and even like, the tiny things, and like, really create that space. And then I also very much value the work that I'm doing in the world and my business. So it's finding real life. And so it's finding, that flow, that balance between the two always. Right. So that's where it was like, Psychospiritual Institute, you said 7 years, and here we are coming up at about 7 with PSI. Yeah. The reality is I probably could have gotten where I am right now with my history of business, probably in about 3 years, 3 to 4 years, if I did not have a child.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No.
So coming back to having patience with the process and like surrender to that, I'm like, I'm okay with taking 7 years.
Yep.
It gives me space to be with my son. So that's what came up for me is like, and there are hard moments. There are times when I'm so like, I have a weekend intensive this weekend and there's something that my son's doing on Saturday. And it's like, so trying to find those balancing points.
Yes.
It's brought some stress into my family. We talk about it. We look at what do we need to work through it. My
Right.
husband's extremely supportive and my son's extremely supportive. And I also
wonderful.
think it's great for a child to see their parent, I'm going to say especially a woman, especially a mother. I mean, this is for everybody, like men and women, but I think just because of the history of women in the workplace, I think that it's really powerful for a child to see a woman show up both as a mom where we're juggling a million details of like
Right.
lunch, school, after school, like, right. And running a business where I have almost 10 employees and I'm also running that and seeing how possible that is and how powerful that is.
Absolutely.
And whether the child's a boy or a girl, but maybe especially for girls to see their mother, like in that reference. So there's so many wonderful, beautiful, positive, and powerful things about being a mom entrepreneur. You know what I mean? And their struggles are real,
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the key piece of that message that I hear is it's, first of all, it's doable,
Absolutely.
but also you need to be intentional about your time and juggling that time. So it's not all one or the other. It needs to be that, like you said several times, balancing act between the two of, what the important moments are in your son's journey, being there for those and working those around some of the business side, but then also staying true to your vision for the business and continuing down that path as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are times when I'm like, we might be really, really busy in the business, but then we take a 2-week vacation. And I'm like, I will give it away, or I will schedule a few things that have to get done,
Right.
And that we've found our balance in that. And we take, we'll just go to the spring for the weekend where I can take 2 days and just shut everything down and be fully focused with my family.
Right.
And luckily, like I've set my life up in a way, where I can do that. I can work from anywhere in the world. I can, intentionally, right? Like
Yes.
it's important for me to be able to have that flexibility so that I can have those, important moments with my
Right.
family, with my child growing up. Like, gotta find those balances.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as we near the end of the podcast, just a couple more questions. What have you seen, and you've mentioned some of these, but what do you feel your greatest challenge was as an entrepreneur? And it could be in the Psychospiritual Institute, it could be something before that, but what do you feel like the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome?
So, I just spoke to one, which was, having a child and learning how to balance that, and I do, looking back, I'd say that that's probably the hardest thing. Which is learning who I am in that process, and finding, a way to make that work together. Another thing that I will say too is, so when I started off as an entrepreneur, I live in South Florida. And so for me, like I was big in South Florida community. So I did a lot of things here in South Florida. So my business was very local. And I realized, when my husband and I were, ready to have a baby and like, I was going to be working from home more, that I really wanted to set my business up as more of a global business. Right. So to do that, I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur online and not just like in physical events, which was my classic way. And so learning how to bring my business online was also an interesting learning curve. I think that, with my child was probably the most challenging thing, but building my business online. And so I realized right away, with my background, I was like, well, I'm just going to create an event because that's online. So I did that. I created a summit called Awaken to Wholeness, and I had almost close to 4,000 people globally doing, and that was like launched my immediately like email list online, right away. And then from there, I had to get business coaches, take programs, and really learn that learning curve.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question. If you had to share one thing with people that wanted to start the entrepreneurial journey, like one thing you find that would be the most important piece that you've encountered, what would that be?
I would say I would say to really center in to what it is that you stand for in the world. Like really, really come in intimately to what that is for you and what that means for how you want to live your life, and stay true to that. And because the entrepreneurial journey is not easy, right? There are hard moments. There are definitely challenges. There's a lot of growth that happens. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot that comes with being an entrepreneur. It's not clock in, clock out. You have to create boundaries around your time and all that. What helps me and continues me forward on my journey is holding that vision for what I stand for in the world, and knowing that when I give my whole self to that, I'm living my fullest life and I'm contributing wholeheartedly to, this beautiful transitioning world.
Beautiful. If anyone wants to reach out to you, has any questions about the Psychospiritual Institute, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is psychospiritualinstitute.com. That's the best way to reach me. Okay. There's a form on that, and I get all the emails that come through from there. So psychospiritualinstitute.com.
Perfect. So thank you for joining us today on the Dream Plan Start Grow podcast. If you have any questions for me or around the Dream Plan Start Grow journey, please look at our website, dreamplanstartgrow.com. We do offer a complimentary mastermind on Clubhouse weekly. Please check the website for the day and time that is. Currently, it's Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, but check the website just in case things change. And we appreciate you joining us, Val, and we look forward to seeing where your journey continues to go.
Thank you so much, Allison. I'm so glad that you're doing this and, supporting all these amazing budding entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Dream Plan Start Grow podcast with Allison Turner. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Join the Dream Plan Start Grow community by following us on Facebook or Instagram at Dream Plan Start Grow. See you in the next episode.